Months before the new Obamacare exchanges were to go into effect, nearly 3 times as many voters said the law made them worried rather than reassured. That's according to a Fox News poll in late June. In late July, a majority of Americans wanted it repealed. A new generation of GOP lawmakers who thought they saw a way to do that were selling their strategy last August.
I am very pleased to introduce Senator Ted Cruz.
42-year-old Ted Cruz of Texas is the son of a Cuban refugee father and a working-class Irish-American mother. Princeton, Harvard Law, Supreme Court clerkship, the youngest state solicitor general in the U.S. He ran for Senate in 2012, upset the GOP favorite, and headed to Washington with what he believed was one overriding mandate: repeal every word of Obamacare.
I promised Texans I'm going to do everything I can to stop this failed law.
Thank you.
Here, thank you. You have someone who's dogged and determined. I've been in politics. I know horseflesh.
Democrat Pat Caddell began working in politics when Jimmy Carter was still a candidate for president.
We've had someone who has been in the Senate 5 months be the focus of the president, the vice president, every Democratic mailing is a threat because they smell something that scares them.
The most significant divide right now, it's not between Republicans and Democrats. It is between the entrenched politicians of both parties and the American people. If the path to getting this done depends upon convincing people in smoke-filled rooms in Washington, it can't be done. The only way this happens is if we break out of traditional Washington rules.
Getting this done means killing Obamacare before it fully takes effect.
Between now and September 30th, we need to stand up and defund Obamacare.
September 30th is when funding for the government expires. Cruz says that gives congressional Republicans extraordinary leverage.
The House of Representatives should pass a continuing resolution that funds every penny of the federal government, everything in its entirety, except Obamacare.
What are the senators telling you then?
There was significant resistance internally. A lot of people were urging that we had just come through the sequester battle and we need to focus on that. There is a new paradigm.
You have healthcare, so can we. You have healthcare, so can we. You have healthcare, so can we.
He has got incredible talents and not afraid for a fight, but to have the judgment that goes with it, to be able to think through the policies, to grow, I don't know.
Here's what you hear on Capitol Hill. Senator Cruz is incredibly bright. Princeton, Harvard, Supreme Court clerkship, all that. But he's not common sense smart about how to operate on Capitol Hill.
If the measure is, do you play the Washington games, if you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours, then they're right.
When you first heard of Senator Ted Cruz's defund Obamacare effort, what did you think?
I thought there was no chance whatsoever that President Obama or Democrats in the Senate would vote to defund his signature piece of legislation.
Senator Ron Johnson, a Wisconsin Republican, was elected in the Tea Party wave of 2010. Cruz and others were pushing this defund effort. They were raising money around the country to pressure Republicans to support it. You didn't like that?
Well, I certainly would have preferred the political pressure to be applied to Democrats that actually support Obamacare as opposed to Republicans that share the goal.
Do you think Democrats have fought harder to enact legislation that they've been trying to push through than Republicans?
No, they have followed through on their principle, and I think Republicans ought to have the same commitment to principle.
Were you surprised the defund effort went as far as it did?
No, because I think any kind of fight, whether it had any chance for success or not, resonated with the people who are so concerned about what Obamacare means to our healthcare system, to our federal budget, to our personal freedoms.
And to the economy. Ever hear of a 29er? You didn't before Obamacare. Fox News reporting continues when we return. Obamacare passed in 2010 on the heels of the financial meltdown. The president pitched it as an economic boon to the nation. It would bend the cost curve, he said, help small business. Not for nothing, it was called the Affordable Care Act. As the law takes hold, the economy's still sluggish. Some Americans are wondering if Obamacare is one of the reasons why.
I want to thank all of you for joining us here today. I know I've heard from many of you.
August 28th, Unionville, Connecticut. Democratic Congresswoman Elizabeth Esty is hosting an Affordable Care Act small business workshop.
Frankly, there's been a lot of confusing information, misinformation, uncertainty, and I want to make sure we're sort of all on the same page.
It's a scene playing out across America.
Nobody has given us any figures on what is defined as affordable.
Right.
Okay?
Worried constituents asking what Obamacare will really mean for them.
The settled thought is that they're going to start cutting people's hours, then disqualify them as full-time employees.
There are going to be adjustments we'll need to make, and we'll find those out as the program rolls out.
In fact, the Obama administration has been making adjustments to the law Nancy Pelosi said we had to pass so that we could find out what was in it. 1,200 waivers to companies, unions, schools, and local governments, exemptions to congressional staffers, delayed deadlines like the employer mandate.
Which again, to me, is smart policy. You try to do something transformative to deal with a big problem. You get a feedback loop of what facts are emerging that you couldn't anticipate, and then you make adjustments to improve. That's normal behavior.
Throw the law out. It's all gotta go.
But it's not normal behavior, say many Obamacare critics. They say instead, it's quite literally lawlessness.
Obamacare really isn't a law in the traditional sense. A document that's 2,500 plus pages long can't be a law in the sense of a settled standing rule of right and wrong.
Charles Kessler of the Claremont Institute says the Affordable Care Act gives to the Obama administration and its bureaucrats what the notion of a living constitution gives to activist judges, the ability to interpret the written law as they see fit.
It is indigestible. It is incoherent. It's basically an excuse for bureaucrats and congressmen and congressional staffers and interest groups to negotiate forever the meaning of the law in a way that lines their pockets or favors their interests.
Equally indigestible, Kessler says, the growing stack of Obamacare regulations, reportedly 15,000 pages worth. 71% of Americans find that over the top. While the administration issues those waivers and exemptions, the president can't suspend the law of unintended consequences.
Don't get me wrong, my stores are top performers, and so we made money. It was just on real small margins.
Bob Westbrook of Longview, Texas, told us he won't be able to afford to buy health care for his employees or to pay the Obamacare fines if he doesn't. So he unloaded 2 of his pizza franchises, while he says he could still get a good price for them.
Just the penalty alone was going to be thousands of dollars more than what we even made out of the 3 stores.
Obamacare has put into our language some new interesting phrases. There are now 49ers. 49ers are companies with 49 employees who are just not going to get that 50th employee because it triggers all kinds of expenses and coercions under Obamacare. And then there are 29ers. People working 29 hours a week who aren't going to be allowed to work a 30th hour a week because Obamacare stipulates that someone who works 30 hours a week is a full-time employee.
When you hear that, what do you think?
I think, in fairness, the data is inconclusive as to whether that's happening or not. There's clearly examples of that happening, and there's clearly examples of that not happening.
By summer's end, 57% call the way Obamacare is being carried out a joke.
It's my first town hall.
Some urgently worry that a government program so big and so complicated will be impossible to uproot once it takes hold.
What is your gut? Do you have confidence that this is not happening?
Which is why some folks here in Rome, Georgia, are pushing their congressman to move ahead with his plan to kill the law now.
I'm going to tell you, you better buckle your chin strap. It's going to get a little bit interesting.
Tom Graves' bill to defund Obamacare is the first he's ever written. It will soon pit Republican against Republican.
The best thing you could do is just turn off the TV for a month, right? You'll sleep a lot better.
Coming up, nothing focuses the mind like a deadline, and 3 of them loom over Washington.